wanted to kind of come up with some words which would really kind of embrace what the master plan was going to be about. The first one was celebrate, and the idea of celebrating, I guess, is fairly obvious. We wanted to celebrate the wonderful history and also the pedigree of those buildings. I think the second word is also quite clear, which is restore. I'd say a lot of things have happened over those years. For example, this staircase, which kind of pops in through the Grade 2 style listed facade, was actually put in for the Queen Mother when she came to the Horse of the Year show. She didn't want to mix with the hoi polloi, so they just kind of cut through an amazing facade and put a staircase in. All of this is coming off, so we're very much kind of restoring the heritage fabric. The third word here is really where we got involved, and that is the word enhance. And enhance doesn't mean we're going to put gold taps in the bathroom. Enhance is, how do you enhance the experience? How do you encourage people to come to Olympia? Why would they come to Olympia? And that takes us back to this photograph. So when this photograph was taken, and when the Grand Hall was first constructed, in the company registration, in great kind of Victorian words, it was to educate the masses. And what happened over the time is we have a kilometre of perimeter, but unless you had a ticket to come into the halls, then effectively, why would you come to Olympia? And this kind of education of the masses, it's called a people's palace. It felt to us actually, how do we allow people in? So actually they can say on a Sunday afternoon, where should we go this afternoon? Let's go to Olympia. And to do that, we need to enhance. We need to enhance the offer. And how can we kind of bring more into the space? And as I say through here, the exhibition was bold and inventive, and we wanted to kind of ensure that any master plan going forward embraced that. Just to kind of whip around the estate, so it's kind of clear the bits which we're talking about. So the Grand Hall was the first building, so the larger building you saw on that photograph, Grade 2 star. We then have the Grade 2 listed building, which is the National Hall. And in fact, this 7 metres across here was the active frontage, so that was an entrance into Pizza Express. If you didn't fancy a pizza, you weren't coming in either. Then we have the Central Hall, Grade 2 listed. We then have the G-Gate site, and actually that was the only empty site. And I think when our client bought the site, and they bought the ongoing exhibition business, which is why it's so important to keep the exhibitions going. I guess you would look at this and think, actually, that's the opportunity. You know, everything else is kind of built upon. It's not quite where we were, but effectively that was the development opportunity on the G-Gate site, previously used for logistics. We then have the West Hall, which was the original stable blocks for the building. So the horses used to go in there, and then people used to come into the exhibitions. And actually, a wonderful piece of legacy during the Horse of the Year show. That's where they go again. They all kind of get stabled up in there. We then have the Pillar Hall. So again, Grade 2 star, ante-room to the Grand Hall. That's what we're standing in this morning. And then we have the 1937 building, which is the old multi-storey car park building, now renamed Emberton House after Joseph Emberton, who was the original architect for both the MSCP building and also for the central building. So then we kind of start thinking about the master plan vision. And our client was very kind, in as much as they kind of said to us, what would you do? So rather than it being a very, very definitive brief, the brief was two things. The first one was, you have to keep the exhibition business live. So whatever you do, we need to keep the exhibition going during the construction process. And the second one was, how do we optimize the site? How do we bring back that people's palace? How do we get people to come back to Olympia? And the first thing we kind of thought about is, we sort out the logistics, sort out this kind of linking together of all these things which have kind of happened. So there used to be a street through here. This used to be Hospital Avenue. You used to be able to walk through it. This is the entrance which we kind of saw on the front of the building. So between the two studios, we quite clearly thought, let's get rid of all the freight which is happening along Olympia Way. If we move that into a better place, which is effectively inside the halls, so effectively creating this new logistics centre underneath the buildings, then effectively what we've now done is we've liberated the streets. So we start high-fiving each other. We've now done it. We've unlocked Olympia. We've now kind of created this new porosity, this new permeability through the site. Happy days. We then went to go and see the exhibition business and said, love the idea, but what you've effectively done is you've now given us 3 halls, where actually what we really need is that kind of continuity. So on some certain shows, they use all the halls linked together. But we still thought the idea was right. So we came up with the idea that actually, we'll just lift it. We'll just lift everything up. That's what was there previously. When we go out today, you'll see that some of it's still recognizable, but a lot of this is now gone. But just to give this a scale, that's the equivalent size to Regent Street. That's 22 metres wide. So the idea being that actually if we can liberate this, we can bring the public realm up, then actually what we can now do is start to create a space.
So the idea is to, as we said, to create really the destination, to give permeability to Olympia, to basically allow the public in. And how do we do it? The beauty was to create this level 2 platform that will give you completely new views to the halls, bring you really close to these amazing barrel vaulted glazed roofs. But obviously, because of the weather and all the conditions, we wanted to have it really comfortable. So it was created green area with food and beverage. It will take you through. So it's a destination where people can meet, can have food, can have a drink at all hours. So there are 2 lines of restaurants, food and beverage with a mezzanine. And then we covered it with a vaulted, and to make a direct, basically, reference to the historical horse roof. It is a vaulted arched glass roof as well. And in discussion with the planners, we obviously had to adjust the height, it had to dialogue, it couldn't be super important. We really like it to call the third arch, that is this beautiful canopy on level 2. Talking for the studio, the idea of placemaking and the idea of tactile material, it's the human center kind of vision is what really matters. So looking at every type of 3-dimensionality to give the depth. So we kept the zigzag in the vault. We really looked into every detail and refinement for the handrails, for the pavers. So everything is really looked in its detail, because it's how you experience the space.
It's probably just worth explaining in here that these 2 kind of red lines which we have through here have also got a consent to create internal decks inside of the horse, which don't cover all the horse, but about a third of the horse. And the idea being that actually you can be up on these top floors in the public spaces. You can actually kind of pop through into the halls, see what's going on. And actually you may decide that you want to go to the Ideal Home exhibition that day. So actually you've come up here for a fantastic cup of coffee, but then your day kind of continues into other events, the other purpose, the other reason to come to Olympia.
Yes. And equally is a place, so for the offices that are hovering on top, for the residents, for people who just want to enjoy, stay on the outdoor, now there is a reason to go to Olympia. And then you might decide if you want to go to the exhibition, but it's a far broader audience. The idea is how you bring people up 2 floors. Obviously, we need a very long escalator, but we wanted also that it was a stairway. So it was really interesting, the journey as a landscape project as well, how to make people walk up the stairs, so with planters, with seating. So we are encouraging a massive amount of people to just come up, and then the journey continues under the central, and then it comes down around the
and that's the important
theatre.
thing, but you don't have to come in and then come back out again.
It is a connected route. It's a connected route. It gives you lots of options. Here is a food hall, but you have other facilities along here. So that's the new roof, but the public realm actually continues and links both sides. So it was a massive approach and improvement to the site, because it's a new realm.
It's unlocked something which had previously been about just ground plane. Now what we're doing is elevating a ground plane, but also giving a purpose here. So once we've kind of got people through, what are those functions? So we just talked about the F&B spaces which are through here. We then actually kind of looked at the cultural aspects of Olympia, and the cultural aspect being a hugely important part of its history, but a very, very important part of its future. So we're constructing 2 new venues. So the first one is the one just on the other side of that wall here, on top of the old West Hall, which is a new music venue. And AEG are taking that at a capacity for 4,500 people. Then over here, there's a new theatre, the G-Gate Theatre, which Trafalgar Entertainment Group are taking. It's the largest purpose-built theatre since the National, so a fantastic aspect for the scheme. And the idea being here, but the entrances are up at this level, so you come through here and then arrive into the arena or into the theatre. We then have 2 new hotels. One thing which kind of came through the consultation, both with the local residents but also with the exhibitors themselves, were actually the lack of hotels in the area. So we have 2 hotels. We have a Citizen M hotel, so an urban hotel going on top of the Grade 2 building on the National Hall. And then the old car park building is being repurposed for 2 uses. One is for a 5-star hotel for Hyatt Regency, and then it's also an education building over here for the performing arts is going into the western portion. And then to bring it all together, we then have one Olympia Square, which is a 600,000 square foot commercial space. But that commercial space is very much kind of looking at how it works with the overall Olympia district. So very much looking at arts and innovation, and effectively creating this place. But actually, if you're working inside of the commercial building, you have all these facilities absolutely on the doorstep. And as we know, workplace is a very, very different place than it was 5 years ago, never mind 2 years ago. And so it's about thinking about the future of workplace and how that kind of connects into a wider vision of a place.
The big challenge was to have a 12-story, 60,000 square meter office spaces that was actually on top. So the idea was the facade to have the same corrugation and zigzags, again, to have the same language with the holes, and to break down the mass by doing this stepped long fingers kind of massing, to create an extensive number of terraces that are promoting well-being for people who will work there, access that partially are open to public, others are actually for the offices, but is to really break down the mass and to really allow for extra green roofs. And one thing is really interesting when you walk across here, the public ground, is the detail that we put into the soffit, because that is a whole new experience, how you walk underneath the central and how close you get to the soffit is also extremely interesting. So that's the glow, that's kind of the jewel on the crown of the...
I think the architectural topology is quite clear now, but we were hugely intrigued and delighted actually by the glazing. It's kind of pleated glass on the ground wall, and you can see that DNA then is then kind of wrapped into pretty much all of the buildings. And again, it certainly isn't a pastiche of this building, but what it is, it's an influence to ensure that actually when you read Olympia from afar, you recognise it as a single place.
And it gives richness, as we were saying, gives depth. It's also a sign of respect for the heritage and for the uniqueness that the halls are there. So it was really important to be subtle and to really understand how you want to dialogue. So also the markers, we have chosen the double-story kind of marker to again dialogue with the scale, break down the scale, and not be too competitive by having a single marker. So I think it's quite successful, and you can see it blends in really well with the rest of
that east-west movement of the halls.
Yes.
Is very much kind of concentrated on this idea of the 5 fingers of the main building. But you very much see this kind of continuation, these kind of hovering elements which are completely informed through the heritage. But as this photograph shows, if I just go back again into the daylight view and then into the evening view, again, that's the other purpose of the scheme. It now kind of brings more of an evening economy, a nighttime economy into Olympia, yes, which hadn't previously been there. People were coming to the exhibitions, they were then leaving at 5 o'clock. You can now come to an exhibition, you can come and have dinner, you can go and see a show. But it's also open up to the local community. And the local community benefits here, and Louise will talk about this at length. Really kind of strong support from the local community in terms of what we're trying to achieve in the scheme during the consultation process. And then we drop down onto Olympia Way. So 2 aspects to Olympia Way. The first one is the landscaping, sorting out the level differences into the halls. I both think, Consuelo, you're just about to talk about the escalator route through.
Yeah, this was the entrance to that I mentioned, to bring, you have to invite people into what you were just saying. It is really important to use the language of the grading here to allow seating, to allow informal meetings. So, and that's as well, it was part of the journey, is to break up basically the long journey and to create a stairway that is inviting.
And you'll really get a sense of this when we go out onto the site about the space which was between the 2 halls. Originally there was a 1950s infill building through here, but now actually giving that kind of liberty back to both of the buildings. There's real clarity about the heritage buildings now. And you can see effectively this is where the street used to be. So what we've now done is elevate that street up and above. So in terms of the historic plan form, it's still very kind of recognisable in the master plan.
And that's, yeah, is the first part under the canopy with the mezzanine, and underneath there's the offer. And again, materiality is all about materiality, being very tactile, utilizing the green basically aspects as part of the architecture. So it is a very pleasant experience basically.
Here we're just seeing the entrances into the music venue here and into the theatre here. So it really kind of makes it a very experiential space. And then through here, the main entrances into the commercial workspace are down here as well. So it kind of brings everything together. It's a real kind of purpose to this public realm. There's 2.5 acres of new public realm which has been created as part of the scheme. And then we kind of close the document with the vision for 2024.
This G-Gate theatre building, this became quite a key strategic point for construction because we've chosen this to be the main logistics access for construction. But there's a very deep basement beneath G-Gate and all of the central building here. So there's a top-down construction method that is underway at the moment that permits all the construction traffic to come in at ground level, while underground there's construction occurring at the same time. Just coming around the site, the music venue is the west building over here, and the music venue sits atop the exhibition space underneath. So this is being constructed in 2 phases. During COVID, we had quite a bit of access to the exhibition space while exhibitions weren't running, and we constructed the new music venue floor over the top of the exhibition space, designed for dynamic crowd dancing loads and to acoustically separate the exhibition space from a music venue to allow them both to operate events at the same time. And that was quite a structural engineering challenge to design for the dynamic case that it needs to support, and also from a construction point of view to get that quickly constructed and then hand back that exhibition space, which is now back in Olympia's hands and is running exhibition events again while the music venue is being constructed on top. Coming around to the Grand Hall, this is a beautiful Victorian structure, wrought iron, trussed, barrel vaulted arches landing onto cast iron columns, very decorated and beautiful cast iron columns. And then we've got this new beautiful office building over the top. And there's a very careful relationship between that office building and the heritage structures, where we worked very closely with the architects to try to minimise any intervention between the new permanent structure into the existing structures. And where there needed to be any columns coming through, we've tried to harmonise that with the existing Victorian structures. That was really important when we did the concept with Heatherwick and SPPARCH on the public realm here. And there was an initial vision that had a number of columns. When we got involved in 2020, we quickly worked with the architect to establish that there was a different approach which could remove about 40% of the columns going into the historic structure, essentially by supporting that public realm on grids of 2 columns and having a large cantilevered structure. Then just coming around to National Building, this is where the new Citizen M Hotel sits atop the Grade 2 listed Victorian national structure built around 1920. And the design of this is interesting because this new hotel structure essentially carefully pierces through the existing structure and largely works independently as a structure. And then back to the biggest component of the site, the central building here has a retained Grade 2 listed facade here on the original Empire building, the central building. I guess the interesting parts of this is we've accelerated construction by making parts of this site top down. Some parts are conventional bottom up in a hybrid way that optimizes the construction rate. And in the design, these fingers of the office building here have to cantilever over the historic structures, so they have suspension system at the end of each of these fingers of office building to hang cantilevers of up to 12 metres.
The new walkway for the public realm is probably about a metre above the top of this white ductwork that you can see at the moment, in terms of giving you a feel for the spaces.
Coming across the site here, at the far side you can see the G-Gate site. That's the most progressed of the basements, and actually the top-down slab is partially constructed. There's excavation happening underneath that zone, and we'll have continuous logistics access into the site from there.
Into the project, almost 100,000 cubic metres of excavated material, including basement and piles and things like that. 50,000 cube of new facade, more than that in fact, going across all of the different buildings. Steelwork, I think, is about 16,000 tonnes in total. The biggest piles 60 metres deep, 2.5 metres diameter. And logistically for cranes, we'll have 14 cranes over the course of the project, probably with about 10 or 11 being on site at any one time. So yes, an awful lot going on. So this is the basement underneath G-Gate, which is the theatre. So we have 2 stories of basement, and what we're looking at in the centre there with the reinforcement, that's a stormwater attenuation tank.
Excellent. So we're now standing outside the West Hall. A building in 2 halves, literally. So the ground floor and the first floor are exhibition space. This formed part of phase 1, so we've actually handed this back to the exhibition business and are now occupying and using these 2 levels. And then above, we're then looking at the music venue. So the music venue occupies the 2 floors with a large double height volume as the main auditoria internally.